The summer sun beat down, a golden promise of carefree days. Anthony Wells, his hands still faintly smelling of charcoal from the morning's grill, watched his children, Nia and Leo, with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had earned every bit of this moment. Her laughter, a bright, uninhibited melody, bounced off the azure water of their backyard pool. This wasn't just a pool. It was the culmination of years of relentless effort, of sacrificing evenings and weekends, of navigating the subtle and not-so-subtle hurdles that life had thrown his way. Anthony had worked 3 jobs, the weariness a constant companion, all for the dream of providing his kids a space where pure, unadulterated joy could flourish. He'd envisioned this, the cool water, the sunlight glinting off their happy faces, the quiet hum of a Saturday well spent. It was a symbol of his resilience, of his family's progress. A tangible representation of the American dream he'd chased with every fiber of his being. His wife Maria was out running errands, leaving Anthony to bask in the domestic tranquility, a rare and precious commodity. The pool, meticulously cleaned and filled just days before, was a testament to his dedication, a sanctuary from the world's demands. Naya, his spirited 9-year-old, was practicing her synchronized swimming moves imperfectly. Her younger brother, 7-year-old Leo, mimicking her with chaotic splashing from the shallow end. Anthony smiled, leaning against the patio railing. A silent guardian of this happy scene, he felt a deep sense of peace, of belonging, feeling that echoed the pride he felt in his home, in his neighborhood, in his family. The gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree in their yard, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. A perfect sensory backdrop to the pure happiness unfolding before him. The idol shattered with a piercing scream, a sound so raw and filled with terror that Anthony's blood ran cold. It was followed by the unmistakable sound of sobbing, a heartbroken wail that ripped through the tranquil air. Dropping the cleaning cloth, his heart leaping into his throat, Anthony sprinted towards the backyard, his mind racing with 1,000 terrifying possibilities. He burst through the sliding glass doors, his eyes scanning the scene with growing horror. There, at the edge of the pool, was a woman. Platinum blonde hair permed into an aggressive helmet, sunglasses so large they obscured half her face, and a posture radiating an almost aggressive self-importance. She was the antithesis of the gentle warmth of the afternoon. Anthony watched, disbelief warring with burgeoning fury, as this stranger, this absolute interloper, physically dragged his son Leo out of the water. Leo, a small, shivering figure, was clearly terrified, his small hands flailing impotently as the woman yanked him from the familiar comfort of the pool. Her voice, sharp and shrill, cut through the air, accusing them of hogging community resources and declaring it was her son's turn. Anthony's mind struggled to process her words. Community resources? Hogging her son? He glanced at the pool, then at the familiar fence that marked the boundary of his property. This wasn't a community pool. This was his pool, his private, meticulously maintained backyard pool, the very symbol of his hard-won achievements. The sheer audacity of the woman's actions, the blatant invasion of his sanctuary, left him momentarily speechless, his breath catching in his chest. His daughter Nia, a small, tear-streaked figure, ran towards him, clinging to his leg, her sobs now a quiet, shuddering testament to her fear. Leo stood beside her, shivering not just from the water, but from the shock of the encounter, his eyes wide and confused. A stark contrast to the boisterous joy he'd exuded mere moments before. The woman, who Anthony mentally and increasingly labeled Karen, was unfazed by his arrival. She turned her beady gaze towards him, her expression one of indignant righteousness. "Excuse me," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "but your children were monopolizing the pool. It's my son's turn." Anthony, finding his voice, his tone dangerously low, responded, "This is my backyard. This is my private property. You have no right to be here, and you certainly have no right to touch my children." Karen merely scoffed. "The gate wasn't locked," she stated, as if that somehow granted her automatic access and dominion. So technically, it's accessible. My son has always wanted a pool. It's simply not fair that some people have these luxuries and others don't. You're being incredibly selfish. The casual dismissal of his property rights, the entitled pronouncements about fairness, began to ignite a slow burn of rage within Anthony. His carefully constructed calm was beginning to fray, the years of suppressed frustrations threatening to surface. He was ready to escort her off his property, to demand she leave and never return. When she delivered the final devastating blow, the words that would shatter any semblance of civility, it was in that moment, as the woman's words laced with an unspoken but palpable venom hung in the air, that Anthony felt a shift. The casual entitlement, the bizarre logic, the sheer audacity, it all coalesced into something far uglier. When she spat out, "Your kind doesn't even belong in this neighborhood anyway," a cold, hard clarity settled over him. The casual racism thinly veiled beneath her entitled bluster was undeniable. It wasn't just about a pool anymore. It was about something deeply rooted in prejudice, in a sense of ownership that extended beyond property lines to a perceived demographic purity. The heat of the sun suddenly felt less oppressive than the chill that had settled in his gut. Looked at his children, their faces still etched with fear and confusion, and a fierce protective instinct surged through him. He knew he couldn't let this stand. He couldn't allow this woman to terrorize his family and deny them the simple pleasure they had worked so hard to afford. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain outwardly calm, though his internal landscape was a storm of indignation. He turned, a new resolve hardening his features, and said, "You need to leave now." When she merely crossed her arms, a smug, defiant expression on her face, Anthony made a decision. He stepped back into the house, his movements deliberate. He headed straight for the home security system, his fingers flying across the touchscreen. The full 4K footage captured by the strategically placed cameras around his property was easily accessible. He queued up the video, the clear images of her trespassing, her aggressive demeanor, and her physical contact with Leo playing out before his eyes. He then picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the familiar icon of his contacts. He needed to call the authorities. This was no longer just a dispute. It was a criminal act. Even as Anthony dialed 911, he felt a prickle of unease, a premonition, that this woman, with her unsettling blend of entitlement and aggression, might not play by the rules. He was right. By the time the dispatcher's voice came through the line, clear and professional, Michael was already on his own phone, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. Anthony could hear fragments of her conversation. The staged tremor in her voice, the carefully crafted narrative of victimhood. She was painting herself as the concerned citizen, the brave protector. Discovering strangers in her friend's pool, her child in danger, and most audibly, accusing Anthony of threatening her. The chilling efficiency of her manipulation was appalling. Anthony continued his own call, calmly recounting the events, emphasizing the trespassing and the assault on his child, waiting for the officers to arrive. He was a homeowner, a father, and a victim of blatant harassment and aggression. When the distant wail of sirens grew closer, he felt a surge of relief, tempered by the knowledge that he would have to confront her accusations, and that the burden of proof, though clearly on his side, would still require careful navigation. He met the two patrol cars as they pulled into his driveway, the flashing blue and red lights casting an eerie glow on the once peaceful scene. He saw Karen, standing near the edge of the patio, dramatically dabbing her eyes with a tissue, her voice still carrying across the yard as she spoke to one of the officers. The entire situation felt surreal, a stark invasion of his private world by someone utterly uninvited and unwelcome. The first officer approached Anthony, his expression neutral, awaiting his account. Anthony, maintaining his composure, explained the situation from the beginning, recounting the years of hard work, the significance of the pool, and the unprovoked aggression of the woman on his property. He then, without a word, unlocked his phone and handed it to the officer. The security footage readily available, a silent, irrefutable witness to the day's events. The officer began watching the video, his brow furrowing as he saw Karen physically remove Leo from the pool, her amplified voice echoing from the phone. The officer, after witnessing the footage, didn't simply issue a citation or a warning. He put his radio to his lips and calmly, but with a new urgency, requested backup. "We've got a situation at 142 Oak Street," he stated, his voice betraying a growing seriousness. "Officer needs assistance. Repeat, officer needs assistance. Potential assault and trespassing." He then turned back to Anthony, his demeanor shifting slightly. "Sir, can you tell me if this woman has been here before? Has she ever caused problems?" As Anthony began to explain that this was the first time he'd encountered her. The officer's radio crackled with a new transmission, a dispatcher's voice relaying information that sent a jolt through the assembled group. It turned out this wasn't Karen's first rodeo. The dispatcher mentioned that a report had just come in from another precinct, detailing a similar incident involving a woman matching Karen's description, a pattern of behavior that involved pools. Children and families from various backgrounds, often with complaints filed against them. The officer then looked directly at Anthony, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. The officer who had arrived with him, now having reviewed the same information, confirmed with a nod. The implications were becoming clear. This wasn't a random act of territorial dispute. It was a targeted pattern of harassment, fueled by something far more insidious than a desire for pool time: the arrival of 2 more police cruisers. Lights flashing and adding to the growing spectacle on Anthony's lawn signaled that this was no longer a minor disturbance. The officers who emerged weren't just for backup. They were detectives, their presence indicating a more significant investigation was unfolding. As they approached the woman, who was still putting on a show of tearful victimhood, Anthony learned the true extent of her transgressions. She hadn't just trespassed. She was under investigation for a string of burglaries and a disturbing pattern of false emergency calls, all seemingly targeting immigrant families within the city. His call, coupled with the evidence from his security system, had apparently been the catalyst for a warrant to be issued for her arrest, and more. The detectives, armed with this information, moved swiftly. When they approached her, Karen's victim act dissolved, replaced by a desperate attempt to flee. She scrambled to her feet, her expensive sunglasses askew. Her purse clutched tightly and tried to make a barefoot dash for the unlocked side gate. Her desperate sprint, however, was short-lived. The officers apprehended her before she could even reach the street, her indignant shouts of real estate rights and neighborhood purity echoing her profound disconnect from reality. Meanwhile, her son, the catalyst for this entire chaotic scene, remained on the diving board, a silent, bewildered observer of his mother's dramatic unraveling. The detectives then secured her SUV, which had been parked a few blocks away, as intel suggested. What they found inside confirmed the investigators' suspicions. It was overflowing with stolen packages, damp towels, and, most damningly, a meticulously organized folder filled with HOA complaints, all filed against other residents, none of which were hers to submit. Of justice served, a public unmasking of prejudice and criminal behavior. As the detectives efficiently placed Karen under arrest, her protests turning to muffled cries of disbelief and outrage, a significant portion of the neighborhood emerged. From their homes, drawn by the commotion, they watched from their porches and driveways, a silent audience to the dramatic conclusion of the day's events, replaced by the stark reality of a woman caught red-handed, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of her own actions. For Anthony, but as the police cruisers, their lights now dimmed, began to depart with Karen in tow, a different kind of feeling began to settle over him. He looked back at his house, at the now empty patio, and then at his children. Naya and Leo, their initial fear, gradually replaced by a childlike curiosity about the police activity, were venturing back out into the yard, their eyes drawn to the still sparkling water of their pool. The sun, which had felt so punishing earlier, now seemed to cast a warmer, more forgiving light. By the time the last of the official vehicles had pulled away, the evening air was beginning to cool. Maria, his wife, returned home, her initial concern turning to a mixture of shock and fury as Anthony recounted the events. But amidst the anger there was also a profound sense of relief and a renewed appreciation for their sanctuary. As dusk settled, The sounds of splashing and laughter, muted at first, gradually grew louder, reclaiming the air. Naya and Leo, having dried off and changed into fresh swimsuits, were back in the pool, their earlier trauma seemingly dissolving in the cool, familiar embrace of the water. The cannonballs, the shrieks of delight, the pure, unadulterated joy. It had all returned. The pool, once a symbol of struggle and a target for prejudice, was once again, and more vibrantly than ever, a testament to their family's resilience and the enduring power of simple happiness.